It's time. I look like a Disney villain. I really like this lighting, but it's gonna make me laugh every time I see it. At least I have been taking clips along the way, getting new ideas for things, and almost none of it is in this video. But my phone is full, and so am I. Elf soup. And so to get a handful of things out of the way before I probably make a lot of witches kind of more irritated with me than they usually are. Our balcony is now a lovely shade of gray, even though they took about a month to get through it. It also encouraged me to treat the balcony as more of an extension of our apartment, which I have had a lot of trouble with in the past. It was kind of just a space to toss everything, and then I have a really huge problem with out of sight, out of mind. So hopefully this will keep it accessible for the foreseeable future. I do get the vibe that pretty much all of our neighbors really hate the color, but since we are the spooky people on the block, for lack of a better term, I think it's hilarious. Particularly because they also painted the fence orange. No, I don't know either. I kid you not. But I came home one day and just bust out laughing, but I accept this. You may see some product photos in the future. They're just right up against that fence. The Kickstarter, which you saw in the last video, it went live about a week before I intended it to, because apparently the AI or algorithm, whatever they use to vet and filter new campaigns, it really liked it, and there was a big button in front of my face. And I don't think I need to explain the rest. I'm still wearing linen, but weather has finally turned. It's not fully crisp yet, but I feel more like a human being. Which hopefully will translate into getting stuff done. I do have way more of an appreciation for what the sun actually does for growing things, and the growing things that we can then eat. But you may have noticed in past videos and on other social media that most of my gardening clips and videos are in certain lighting. That's because I am very heat intolerant, which I know, haha, white people. But the kicker is I actually tan, but if I get too hot, then I break out in hives. So that's a weird juggling issue that I've had for the last several years, but thankfully it's under control, mainly because of you guys, and in various venues I get to do things very unconventionally. I can tailor my life to not breaking out in hives because the condition I have, thankfully, is fairly mild, but in more extreme cases, and it could develop into that, it can essentially be as bad as bee stings or peanut allergies from the sun is a deadly laser. This is right in the little liminal space between end of summer, beginning of when it really starts to feel like fall, where I can start to collect a lot of spooky things, which brings me back to the witches, which I will get to directly in a minute. But and I really hate the word conversion, like converting, because that entails that the context of that is often in contexts I try not to find myself in. But as I started identifying more as pagan or witch, I had so much more of an appreciation, not just for the strictly practical things like, oh, we're going to grow tomatoes, but some of the weird things that as things start to grow next year, it may be on my list, is it probably a garden tour for some of the offbeat things that I enjoy growing and using in various ways. We are also somewhat maximalists, and because of a lot of professional things that I've been focusing on, that has bled into pretty much every area where I am pretty sure you can no longer call it strictly a style, is just kind of there. I also have a lot of support in figuring out how to make the house run better. I am not very good in the kitchen, but it only makes sense that since I'm home, I can be the one who vacuums, etc. We do not care if our living space is unconventional as long as it works for us, with the caveat of nobody stepping on pins and such. It also helps somewhat with the not looking disabled thing too. It's our home, our terms. I encourage people to approach more things in life that way. And now, more to the point. 'Tis the season for many glorious things, everything I said, and so much more. But it's also the season for people to think they are appropriately responsible with spooky shit. This is not a video on like how to cast circles, how to cast wards, how to spiritual hygiene, stuff like that. I would love to read more about I read recently something about graveyard brushes that they had somewhere with a sign that basically said you can brush the ghosts off of you. Like, I can get behind that. Like, not everybody's going to be carrying sage or whatever all around with them, but that would be a more specified contextual thing. What I'm talking about more is with some recent events, particularly involving a certain Etsy witch and a tiny-faced podcaster, there has definitely been a different kind of uptick in people interested in this kind of thing. Particularly, I think, because it almost coincides with what most people consider actual spooky season. But we will loop around to that. And so, because you should know by now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that while I show you clips of what we found in poking Halloween shopping once my eyeballs stopped strobing. It's been no secret that I am not a fan of social media, but one of many facets of that is the phenomenon of the social media witch. It's not a crime to be a witch on social media, and if you are one and it's part of your income, I understand that social media is mostly a part of that.
I mean, if it wasn't pink.
Yeah. Ah, yes. But I do present for your consideration, not everything should be put on the internet. But also, not everything on the internet is trustworthy, even when someone claims the label of spiritual. Put up that thing when we get home.
There is no such thing as too many blankets. Ooh, that one's subtle with the orange pumpkins.
And some of you are going, well, duh, but this is a video to put more weight in the bucket, to make it a little bit louder, because I have had personal experiences in the past with people getting into a spiritual space or a new spiritual space after they have left an old one, and they let their guard down, or they're not looking as closely, because it's that weird contradiction in our brains that we can get of, oh, this isn't like the old place. It's not going to be the same, so you don't look for the same red flags. And this guy had kind of a huge chip, but she sends me pictures of cool stuff while I'm working, and she can like go out with friends, and he called to me. I found something I want to get to repair it, but that's for another video once I can actually get it. And by the way, the power tools are hers. So, not only should not everything be on the internet, but not everyone who is in the same spaces is necessarily your friend. So what does this have to do with the internet, honestly? That event that I mentioned, where people were suddenly hyper-aware of Etsy witches, it did prompt an uptick in interest in the occults because, hey, something might have worked. But it did add a layer to a pre-existing issue. Witchcraft is a skill. It's not a social club. And in a country that teaches people that spirituality is compulsively a group project contingent on pre-approved literature, it's really easy to feel like you are immune to some horrible things. Ah! Come here! Or even things that are a little lighter on the spectrum, but still snowball in a heck of a way.
Is it time to do stuff? House stuff?
It's also really easy to, as I said a second ago, once you detach yourself from one label and find another, to be very, very blinded to the idea that people make bad decisions everywhere. And there's shades of culture, there's different etiquette rules, everything like that, but there is no one exempt from bad behavior. It can be really easy to feel like if you do the same things that other people do, but then you use different words to describe it, it's now acceptable somehow because people just don't understand your group. That might come across as a bit mean, but it does happen a lot. Swapping labels doesn't make something okay. So for a recent story, I was recently invited to do a lot of damage to my reputation as a creator in general. My Kickstarter was approached by a company that I'm not going to name because it's more about the point rather than the name. They asked me privately if we could trade shoutouts, and when I looked, their campaign had already reached their goal by over 200%. I had never seen them before. I had never played anything that they were offering. I had never even held one of their items in my hand. I questioned why they were reaching out to me if that was the case, and they told me they were more concerned about visibility than the actual funding. Which is convenient considering they already had everything. Meanwhile, my Kickstarter is still ticking, which you can find here or below. Both these campaigns have to do with tarot, a supposedly spiritual thing. You can use it in other ways, but it's generally considered a spooky occult item. I told them that they could still promote me, but I would take a massive hit to my reputation for trying to promote something that I had no experience with. Their excuse was that we just weren't connecting. So not everything should be put online, but also witchcraft and the occult is not exempt from attracting the wrong kinds of people, the types of people who want something from it rather than to practice it.
Okay, so because that grow light doesn't have the chain or anything, I have been trying to figure out how to hang it, especially because the cord is very short. So digging in the office, that thing right there is the old strap for a backpack that I used to have, and then we have obviously the mug hooks. Ta-da! So these are quilt pins. They are basically regular safety pins without the curl thing at the end here. So this is not perfect, but it will definitely work, and the cord was not quite as short as I thought it would be. So next step is more dirt and more food inside.
A lot of these people, in my experience, are not even the people who question you and make you feel bad about things. It's usually the people who tell you that you're doing everything perfectly, you're doing great, because they want you to be emotionally invested in them, which is also how people recruit others into their religion. A lot of the time. Consider So what's the point of this video in general? I am not trying to dissuade you from your newly found interest in the witchcraft and the occult and spookier side of life. So whether you feel like witchcraft and occulty stuff is a religion, a spirituality, or lifestyle, whatever, there are patterns of behavior that transcend labels. Even if that label means something good or even neutral, it still happens. The most important advice I think I would give, without getting into semantics and weird technicalities of witchcraft itself, that's for other videos, is to practice media literacy, as well as apply it to people. Starting with, who does this piece of media or something that somebody is saying, who does this benefit? This includes who does it paint as an authority, and in a broader sense, who does it help get what they want? And we all want something, but identifying that is really, really important to start with. Sometimes, and I've seen this personally, people really want to be seen as a mentor. Like spooky influencer, if you will. Like the head of a group, president of a club, someone who is definitely, unquestionably credible. And it's fine to want to be seen as someone who knows what they're talking about, but if you overemphasize that, it will be really obvious that other things fall by the wayside. Sometimes people will tell you not to access certain media, but it's a really valuable skill to be able to read something and consider it in the full context without just implicitly accepting it as true just because it's in print or it's published. And a good example of this, I feel, is my brain is not pulling up. There's a book called The Black Arts, which was published in the 60s, which is an overall description of the history of occult. There are a lot of things in there that are definitely a product of the author, which I highly disagree with, but because of what the point of the book is, I have been reading it because I like to know the perspectives. So if someone does see that I'm wearing pentacles and they bring up certain things, I can know what the heck they're talking about. But there's a lot in that book that I don't agree with. Most of these things being historical studies that are not represented well. And also sometimes, I've seen this personally, people will appeal to your emotions, which on the surface can be a very obvious thing. But what surprised me in cases that are running through my brain right now is when people would try to intimidate, at the same time pull pity cards of, you need to listen to me, otherwise I'll do this, at the same time as, I deserve to be listened to because you just don't understand. Which is wholly separate from, I would like to convince you of what I'm saying. It's a whole crazy mishmash of whatever is useful in the context. So on a more positive note, whether your interest is inspired by recent events or because it's now officially most people's spooky season, that is perfectly fine. And you don't need my permission to do that, but I want to be clear about it anyway. That's perfectly fine. Honestly, the worst thing that I think could realistically happen is you read a bunch of books or whatever media that you learn best in. You read a bunch of books and you know more than you did before. Whether you practice or not, it's always good to expand your dark horizons. But don't just read books that are marketed as witchy. Read history, read folklore, read things about archaeology. As I said, 'tis the season, as well as to cosplay Twink Vincent Price, apparently. My name is David Blackbird McKinsey. Yes, really. And I do way too many things to fit neatly in small blurbs. Sometimes I sit in dark rooms and take weird pleasure in funky lighting. This YouTube channel is meant to encourage curiosity, particularly when it comes to traditional skills that have been co-opted by the Judaism Fanfic Society. I try to post twice a month, but with your support, I can definitely post more as well as explore way more subjects and try out a lot of new things. My many skills are my full-time job, so you would not only be supporting a creator, but supporting a creator who cannot function in regular society because of clinical audacity. I would love to hear what topics you're interested in. If you want to post them below, as long as you're in a safe place to do so. I don't know everything, but I like to learn as well as try out a lot of stuff. So until then, I will see you next time. She's snoring.